Do you consider a tube frame car a rigid body for the purposes of calculations? Generally, yes. Obviously, we're relying on the fact that that tube frame is a well-designed tube frame. There are plenty of tube frame chassis out there that are terrible in terms of compliance. What I mean by compliance is when we load the suspension up, that essentially you've got, we can think of the chassis as being a big bracket. It's the bracket that we're attaching everything to. It's the bracket that we sit on. It's the bracket that we attach all our suspension and our dampers and our springs and everything to that. Essentially just holding all of this stuff together. Now, just because it's a tube frame does not necessarily mean it's a nice stiff chassis. There are plenty of terribly designed tube frame chassis out there. It's really nothing to do with what it's made out of, whether it's carbon, whether it's a steel unibody, or whether it's tube chassis. That doesn't really tell you anything about the quality of the stiffness. With all of that said, generally, as long as your chassis is a well-designed chassis, regardless of its construction, for most, and definitely for simplified calculations, things like getting your initial spring rate set up properly, doing damping calculations, doing load transfer calculations, definitely, certainly at the entry level anyway, you're definitely assuming that to be rigid. The reality is it just adds a lot of complexity. When you stop using a rigid assumption on your chassis, it adds a huge amount of really highly non-linear complexity to the problem. Now, in saying that, in a professional context, you absolutely take that compliance into account. That usually means both simulating it, but also actually directly measuring how much, particularly things like torsional rigidity have you got in your chassis. You can then take that into account in your load transfer and other simulation equations. Obviously, it depends on your level of sophistication. Definitely at the club level, for most people doing really simple calculations, you're definitely going to be assuming that it's rigid. That question was taken from one of our free live lessons. If you like free stuff and you want to expand your knowledge, click the link in the description to claim your free spot to our next live lesson. You'll learn about optimizing the performance and handling of your car on the racetrack, as well as improving your skills behind the wheel. Plus, you'll have the chance to ask your own questions, which we'll be answering live.